for joining us today. We're going to talk about how we measure success in innovation labs. And this is our monthly meeting with Ontario Consulting team. And we'll just do a quick introduction. My name is Ziad Nasser. I'm a business agility and transformation consultant. I focus on innovation labs and how to make a business more agile. I'm based in Toronto, Canada. With me, I have Domenico Sesto. He's based in Boston, US. He's working for John Hancock. Uh, Also, Janelle, she's a Scrum lead with John Hancock based in Boston. And Samir is a business agility and innovation consultant. He's right now in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Uh, as I said, in our discussion today, we'll focus on how we measure success in Innovation Lab. And I would love to start with like reason we have Innovation Lab is because we wanted to have a different operating model. We wanted to, usually organizations are too slow to adapt or change. So we create Innovation Lab with different operating system, different operating model to allow some agility in decision making and fast-paced experimentation. But what organizations tend to fail is they use the same metrics that they're using for the organization themselves to measure the success of the innovation lab, which might not give the right impression about the success of the innovation lab because you're not measuring it successfully. So, Dom, what's your opinion about how the limitation of, or what are the limitation of these ways of measuring innovation labs?
Ziad, so thank you. First of all, I want to thank you and Samir for hosting this today. I'm very excited to participate in this conversation, something that is near and dear to my heart. To your question, so you said it about conventional financial performance metrics. They are important. They do add value, gross margin, return on investment, valuation, liquidity. But with innovation labs, you need more of a balance when it comes to measuring success in metrics. So those quantitative metrics, great. They provide a service, so to speak. But then what is also important is kind of the other end or the other side of the equation, which is those qualitative metrics, things like communication, understanding how we're communicating back and forth, which mechanism we're using to communicate, teamwork and collaboration. This is an area that I feel very passionate about, is how do you build high-performing teams? How do you collaborate? How do you work with folks in, let's say, different timetables, or sorry, different time zones and different cultures? Leadership styles. We have to take into consideration things like the new generations and the different leadership styles that they prefer or they excel in. Problem solving, customer satisfaction, employee and morale and engagement. I could go on and on about some of the qualitative components, but what is most important is that innovation labs, to be truly successful, requires both those qualitative and also those quantitative.
Okay, that's very, very good point. And talking about that qualitative metrics, Samir, what's your take on that, like in terms of qualitative metrics and how to measure these innovation labs?
First of all, it's a pleasure to be in this session. And Dom is right. And for public sector, these challenges are even bigger. As you can imagine, like success isn't just about revenue. It's about how much value we bring to citizens, how efficient our public services are, and our overall impact on society. And the same holds true for banking. Like in banking, while profit matters, regulations mean we also need strong, lasting capabilities. That's why qualitative measures are so important. Like we look at how innovation changes our organization, and we need to ask some questions. Let's take culture. Are more employees feeling safe to try new things? Are they sharing ideas and working together more? And when it comes to learning, how fast are we testing ideas? Are we learning from what works and what doesn't? Are we sharing that knowledge? When it comes to problem solving, are we finding and solving real problems for users and citizens? Are they happy with our pilot solutions? Like when we show impact, we combine all these. Every innovation must link to our organization's strategic goals, as you can imagine. And this shows how our innovation lab helps the bigger picture.
Yeah, this is go
Zia, can I
ahead,
say one
Dom.
thing? Because Samir said a couple things there that I'm glad he did. And
Yeah.
you talked about the culture and also values, Samir. I'm glad you brought that up because when we are innovating, it's important to understand that the way we are able to be most successful in innovating is having that culture that enables it. And then at the end of the day, to your point, why are we innovating? We're trying to deliver
Right.
value. So Samir, great points. And I just kind of want to echo Samir's points that he just said. Back to you, Ziad.
Summarize the point that Samir mentioned and you, Dom. I think the three things stand out to me. Like basically the culture is a big aspect here. The second is problem discovery management and how we solve the problems. And the last thing is and the building capability in the organization, shifting the mindset. So hard numbers that you can measure in terms of quantitative things that basically applies to innovation lab.
Yeah, so yeah, that's a good point too. So what you're also referring to, I think, is the non-financial quantitative metrics. Is that a fair understanding?
Yeah.
Yeah, and when we get into the non-financials, I'd like to think of kind of three main categories. You have your inputs, your throughputs, and then ultimately your outputs. Your input metrics, if you think about them at the very simplest form, is what resources are we going to invest? Things like time, labor, material. We're working with a partner, personnel. Once we get into throughput metrics, it's all about how the work is completed. How efficient are we going through the process, the work process that is? Maybe it's widgets produced per hour. It could be how many proof of concepts we get completed in a particular timetable. If you're working, let's say, in an agile methodology, and you're working quarter over quarter, or maybe sprint over sprint, which may be 2 to 3 weeks per sprint. And then it all gets down to the last metric, the last category, which is your output. And the way you kind of define that is, in essence, is what are the results of your achievements going through this process? It could be things like revenue sales. It could also be
Yeah.
things like satisfaction scores. It could be bug fixes if you're working in software. Risk mitigation. It could be cost avoidance. It could be patents. It could be all these other things. So your input metrics, your throughput metrics to get you to your output metrics.
That's a nice way also to put it in terms of innovation management, like input, throughput, and output. Janelle, do you have any comments about that since you have also your experience about Scrum, being a Scrum Master and a Scrum leader? How does that quantitative matrix and works in your life, in your work and day-to-day life?
Yeah, thank you. So I agree with what Dom said, around the input, throughput, and output. I think in my role, we are primarily looking at the throughputs, so the work processes. But in that, I think the most important piece is just that shared understanding across the board, across team members and your leadership, business technology, so that there is that shared understanding around the throughput process and how we're getting to those outputs.
That's a very good caveat to what I was going next. Like with Samir, like we talked about quantitative, we talked about qualitative, we talked about building that shared understanding. How do you put that together in terms of coming to a holistic view?
That's a very good question. Business agility is about telling a complete story of our value that really connects with everyone involved. It's more than just sharing numbers. It's about showing how we strategically contribute, right? So when we use an innovation dashboard or call it innovation scorecard, instead of just financial reports, it focuses on key areas. And by key areas, I mean things like strategy and impact, building capability and culture, innovation progress, and the future value. Let's talk quickly about strategy and impact. Every innovation must connect to our organizational strategic objectives, period. This shows our innovation helps the bigger picture. We emphasize, right? We emphasize solving real problems and the proven impact of our solution. When it comes to building capability and culture, we combine numbers like how many people are trained with the stories, how they used new skills. We show how employee engagement, innovation, employee engagement in innovation grows, and how teams collaborate more across departments. That's why we keep emphasizing on cross-functional teams, right? We say that all the time. And this manifests even more in the context of innovation labs. Now, when it comes to innovation progress, we track, as we all know, we track the flow of ideas, experiments, and early products, or what we call MVPs. And this shows our lab is actively producing results. And we highlight how learning from failed attempts saves money and reduces future risks. And last, when we talk about the future value, we show successful prototypes that are ready to grow, even if they aren't making money yet. And I'll
Okay.
repeat, even if they aren't making money yet. We also point out to new opportunities or cost savings that our innovation might create for the future.
This is a very good, like, I like the way that you put it together, and when you said like value dashboard or innovation scorecard. This is a nice terminology, I think. And when you break it down, I think if I was to summarize it into categories, you mentioned like a strategic alignment, you talked about the building the organization capabilities and the innovation pipeline, and then you talked about the future potential of these ideas.
Exactly.
Dom, what do you think about this?
Yeah, and Samir also said another piece that I think is very important too when he talked about storytelling. So this holistic approach to blending qualitative and quantitative together in telling the story is super effective when it comes to innovation labs. Let me give you kind of a high level basic example.
Yep.
If you're an apparel manufacturer, and let's say you're reporting into your senior leaders or your board of directors, and your t-shirt sales are down this quarter. Well, that quantitative metric tells them something. Most likely profits going to be down. They're going to be maybe the expenses up, but what it doesn't give them is the full picture. And then what they find out is this manager understands kind of the balance of the qualitative and quantitative, looks at feedback from some customers. He's going online through some of the social media posts, and he's seeking feedback maybe through surveys and other feedback mechanisms, and finds out that these t-shirts have this fading problem, which then leads him to start going into the analytical mode and say, hey, what's going on with my fade problem? And then maybe finds out that the organic dyes that are being used by their suppliers from let's say a region in the world that's having some environmental issues, some fires, some floods, and then ultimately allows this manager to make kind of a pivotal decision to maybe switch maybe to a synthetic or find a new dye producer.
Yeah.
The point is that the quantitative sales are down in t-shirts by X amount percent didn't really add much value until the second part, the qualitative. And then you put them together and you tell the story, it leads to action, and then ultimately leads to productivity and pivoting and getting to where you want to be. You want to have an increase in t-shirt sales. So that's just one example of telling a story with qualitative and quantitative metrics.
Yeah, Samir, what's your take on that? Like, I love the story, the aspect of storytelling.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with more with Dom. Like, it's about demonstrating value through multiple dimensions, right? Constantly reinforcing the idea that innovation isn't just a cost, and the innovation lab isn't just a cost, but a critical strategic investment in the organization's future, and its readiness and competitiveness on the long run, right?
That's a very, very good. Also, a very good caveat to my next question, which is basically how do you ensure sustainability in terms of innovation? Like the idea, it's not a short journey or a one-off. So how do you make sure that this stays for the long run, it's sustainable, and it produces like results on that long run?
Like as a business agility consultant, I would say that sustainability is deeply tied to leadership commitment, learning culture, and continuous feedback. These three together super important. When we talk about leadership commitment, leaders are role models, right, inside the organization. Senior leadership are expected to champion innovation, allocate resources, and more importantly, participate in innovation initiatives. Like their buy-in and active support are foundational for a sustainable innovation culture, period. When it comes to culture of celebrating learning, as Dom mentioned earlier, like reframing failure as learning is crucial, especially in the context of innovation lab. Creating an environment where experimentation is encouraged and the lessons, even from unsuccessful ventures and ideas, are celebrated and shared widely. Like very important. Like you want people to know what worked and what did not work. This reduces the fear of trying new things. Like we want people to feel good, feel at ease trying new things, right? Not
Yeah.
to shy away from that. And last, I would say like the feedback loop and adaptation. We know this is at the heart of the agile mindset, right? Continuously gathering feedback on the lab's effectiveness and its processes and its impact. We do want to live in the silos. We want to listen to the stakeholder, to the outside world, what they think, what they see, what they feel when it comes to the contribution and the value added by the innovation lab. Being agile in adapting the lab's own strategy based on these insights is very critical.
Understood. Yeah, that's very good. Janelle, what do you think your take about the sustainability aspect here?
I agree with what's been said already. The only thing I would add is this idea of psychological safety. So that's going to, if psychological safety is present, then that's going to encourage a culture of continuous feedback, having the confidence to bring new ideas to the table to fail. So I think that that is the through line there of what Samir and Dom said.
Thank you.
Nice.
By both Janelle and Samir. And Samir also hit upon this idea of failure. And when you're in this proof of concept kind of scenario, I like to redefine the word failure to opportunity. So in my mind, that's the equation, is failure equals opportunity. I love what he said about celebrating it and communicating it out. And Samir also touched upon about when leadership are the ones kind of leading it and getting back to the culture and psychological safety. It's just so important to have your leaders create that psychological safety and that culture that facilitates and creates and rewards this innovation. So excellent points by all. Thank you. Ziad, back to you.
Yeah. Well, if I would like to summarize what we discussed so far, like I think in terms of measuring success in Innovation Lab, all the points that you were mentioned here, just try to put it in a framework where we have some quantitative metrics, some quantitative metrics, then put it in a value dashboard and create a stories around it, and then basically at the end ensure that there's some sustainability of how we sustain that innovation journey. So I love the framework concept that we actually came up with here in terms of how we can measure that success and ensure that it's sustainable, and it's quite different than regular financial organization financial metrics and just looking at numbers. So innovation tend more to be related more to culture, and we're trying to build the culture, and stories plays a larger role in that. Sustainability, psychological safety, as Janelle mentioned, plays a huge role in that. So any final remarks? Samir or
Ziad,
Dom?
I love the way
Yeah.
you summarize that. And I think my last comment I'll make is, well, first of all, thank you. I love this conversation. I think this is was very beneficial and super interesting. I've read from many Fortune 500 CEOs that are talking about culture, and some of them are starting to say things like that culture is becoming their superpower. And this emphasis that everything you just described isn't, it's something that is becoming a front runner for taking us to kind of the next 20, 30 years to get that competitive advantage to kind of shore up our existence and ultimately to be successful. So thanks again for taking the time. I really enjoyed this conversation.
One thing you mentioned at the beginning of this conversation, Ziad, that we need always to remember that innovation labs, they run in a different operating system in comparison to the hosting organization. If we use the same operating model to run an innovation lab, we're setting ourselves up to fail. We need to make sure we give them the psychological safety, the empowerment, and the room to experiment with the new ideas, creative ideas, for them to come up with hopefully innovative products and services. And with that, I just want to say again, thank you so much for facilitating this session, and I'm glad to have Janelle with us along with Dom.
Thank you very much, team. I think this was an enlightening discussion, and thank you for all your insights here. And I think we summarize that measurement aspects of this innovation lab in a very good way. Of course, each organization is different, but we just set the framework where organization need to look at these. It's not business as usual when you are managing innovation. Thank you, everyone.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you